Welcome to CryptoWise. Today is a very special episode of CryptoWise Chats. This is where we have in-depth conversations with the greatest minds in crypto. And if you watch our channel, you know that we love Polkadot. Q4 2021, we are here. This is going to be the quarter of Polkadot. All right, guys. We know Gavin Wood is getting ready to announce the parachains for Polkadot. We already have 10 parachains on Kusama, but that is just the tip of the iceberg. There are so many amazing projects ready to go, ready to launch. And one of those projects is Polkadex. This is a project we have been excited about for a long time. I know a lot of you in our Telegram group love this project as well. By the way, if you are not in our Telegram group yet, it is CryptoWise official. There is 24/7 crypto talk in there. Make sure you join. But in today's CryptoWise Chats, we had the pleasure of sitting down with Vivek Prasannan. He is the executive director of Polkadex. We go in depth. This was a really great conversation. Any of you interested in Polkadex, this is a must watch. And if you don't know about Polkadex yet, this is a must watch. But before we dive in, do me a favor, show some love for Polkadex by smashing the like button, and show some love and appreciation for in-depth interviews in crypto by subscribing to the channel and hitting that notification bell. All right, CryptoWisers, without further ado, here is our conversation with Vivek Prasannan, Executive Director of Polkadex. All right, CryptoWisers, today we have a very special CryptoWise Chats for you. We are here with Vivek Prasannan. He is the Executive Director of Polkadex. Polkadex is a project we've talked a lot about on the channel. It's one of the upcoming Polkadot projects that we are super excited about. So very excited to have Vivek on the channel with us. They just launched their mainnet a couple of days ago, or maybe even yesterday. Was it yesterday, Vivek?
Yeah, 29th.
29. Well, welcome to CryptoWise. Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Marvin and Milton. Thanks for having me here.
Okay, so I definitely want to get into the mainnet very soon because lots of questions about that. Super exciting that that is launched now. But first, just for people who might not be that familiar with Polkadex, can you just give us a quick précis of what makes Polkadex different from all the other dexes that we know of in crypto already?
All right, definitely. I think Polkadex order book, once it is launched, it will be the first decentralized non-custodial peer-to-peer exchange that will support high-frequency trading. And that eliminates the problem of front running. So these are the two key things that we will be solving once the product is launched. So essentially, we are an order book based decentralized exchange, and as part of the connection with the Web3 ecosystem, we also have two other products launching alongside it, which will be completely and fully decentralized. That is the Polka Pool, which is the better version of Uniswap, you can say. And you have also the Polka IDO, a platform that is fully automated on the substrate chain, the same framework that drives Polkadot.
Awesome. So yeah, we'll talk a little bit about what exactly that means in this interview. So don't worry if you guys don't know exactly what that means. We will go through it in detail. So we talk a lot about Polkadot on this channel. We love Polkadot. It's our favorite network. We're so excited to see the parachains launching on Kusama. And so let's talk a little bit about your choice to choose to build on Polkadot instead of any of the other blockchains. So when did you first learn about Polkadot, and what was that first inspiration to say, I'm going to build something on this network?
Right. You have to go back in time, Milton, because the idea for creating a decentralized exchange, basically it stemmed from the problems that we were facing in this industry. If you were in this space for a long time, you know that right from 2015, there were several projects that actually went behind the same set of problems that we are facing now. And the time we came together as a team to try and tackle it, it happened early 2020, That's when we first, I mean, at least I first came across Substrate and the Polkadot ecosystem. I was introduced to it by my co-founder, that's Gautam. He's the CEO of the company now. So basically, he explained to me how it is different from building something on Ethereum. So I had a chance to um, learn Substrate and also the programming language that supports it, Rust. And we were trying to do it, and we tried to understand how it works. So it wasn't essentially going after the ecosystem or Polkadot as it is. We came upon a framework that, or the tool set that allowed us to solve the problems in the decentralized exchange space for so many years, right? We all know that decentralized exchanges didn't have enough liquidity until Uniswap came up with the AMM model. So it always had a problem with liquidity. It always had a problem with, uh, you know, getting shut down the moment it actually gets liquidity or gets to gain some traction. And we always had the problem with front running. So all of these have been there for a long time now, and people have been behind it. And one of the reasons why the AMM model became so successful is because of the these many problems, like especially with the liquidity and the fact that since it's not fully decentralized, the regulators or authorities, they were able to bring them down at an appropriate point whenever they actually went off the limits. So when we looked at Substrate as a framework, it actually allowed us to uh, design a blockchain the way we want it so that it supports the kind of data or the kind of verifiability that is required for an application like an exchange.
Great.
Because
That actually takes me to exactly where I want to start talking about it. And it's you bringing up this idea that Polkadex is its own blockchain. And this is something we try to tell our community a lot is Polkadot and Kusama are very different than any of the other layer ones, where they are more of like a layer 0 and all the parachains are their own layer 1. So can you tell me a little bit about uh, what it would mean, what it means for Polkadex to be its own blockchain on Polkadot versus, and because that's different than any other Dex we really know of. Most other Dexes are just
right,
a DApp that are being built on a another layer 1. So for you, you're your own blockchain, and that's what it means when we're talking about the fact that Polkadex launched their mainnet this week. That's what we're talking about. They've launched the mainnet of the Polkadex blockchain. Very, very different than any other DEX that is just a DApp being built on another blockchain. So can you explain that difference to our audience and why that gives Polkadex such a big advantage, maybe?
absolutely. See, if you look at the other dApps that are built on a blockchain like Ethereum or any other smart contract supported blockchains, it is essentially a DApp, like you mentioned, and any other connection that you need to have to another blockchains or outside that blockchain needs to be done by the layer one, as you mentioned. In this case, any layer one blockchain basically supports the DApps. But in the case of Polkadot, what happens is that for the first time, you have a dedicated layer which is focused on connecting other blockchains. Because the challenge so far has been in the industry to enable the properties of one blockchain to transfer to the other without losing the verifiability, right? That's been the biggest hurdle when it comes to interoperability. And for the first time, Dr. Gavin, as part of the scalability model that he had in mind, as against sharding, which Ethereum had in mind, in essence was actually solving the problem of interoperability, not just scaling, right? So we have a relay chain which actually communicates and talks to these independent blockchains, which you mentioned as layer one, with certain specific protocols like CMP and all of that. So they are building together a relay chain which will allow or make it easy and inexpensive for these tokens to get transferred between each other, because there's a dedicated relay chain right in the center, which is like a layer 0, as you mentioned, so that all of these other chains with specific purposes can be built and connect between each other. And also the fact that Relay Chain is focused on building integration with other blockchains in the ecosystem. uh, Projects need not necessarily spend a lot of money or resource to get connected to other bigger blockchains which are in existence from the time, since Ethereum was there. So for example, if somebody wants to connect to a Binance chain, or for example, Cosmos or Cardano, since the relay chain is focused on building this infrastructure, there will be more resources allocated to that, and they will eventually solve the problem to the benefit of all the other chains connected to the system. So when you look at an exchange, the basic thing that drives an exchange is liquidity, right? In crypto space, liquidity is all coming from, basically liquidity is scattered around different ecosystems. You have liquidity in Ethereum, you have some in Cardano, you have some in Bitcoin. So there's no way for them to interact and become a junction point for exchange purposes, right? So even if you build the app or an exchange in Ethereum, you basically is restricted to the tokens in Ethereum, which is, the vast majority of decentralized exchanges built right now is on Ethereum. So we do have other protocols like 0x, but eventually what happens is that there's a lot of friction for these other ecosystems to move their assets between each other. So for the first time, we have a option where you have a relay chain which can actually be this junction point for transmitting these tokens so that other dApps can make use of it. But initially, you may have a challenge in the sense that since we have a timeline in place for launching our project, we may face certain delays in getting these blockchains integrated into the Polkadot ecosystem, but it will happen eventually. But even otherwise, if you look at the long-term prospects or long-term future, you can see that if once Polkadot becomes a fully functional and very very robust ecosystem, there'll be lot more teams building these bridges to other chains. Like already, Cosmos is really working with the Polkadot team to get that done. So we'll have more integrations happening in the future, and any dApp that is connected to Polkadot will be able to make use of that. So that's a different
Right.
scenario right now. So I hope you get the advantage that Polkadot gives for an application that focuses on allowing value exchange between blockchains.
Yeah, yeah, no, that makes sense. And so let's talk a bit about the mainnet launch here, because as I said, this means they've launched their mainnet. They are their own blockchain, which is different than a lot of the dexes that you know of already. So let's just talk about the process here. So Polkadex launched their token, you launched your token Pdex on Ethereum first. And this has confused, I think, some people out there because some Polkadot projects waited. They didn't launch a token until they got a Parachain. And other projects like yourself, you decided to launch the Pdex token on Ethereum first. But now that your mainnet is launched, what people can do now if they own Pdex is bridge the Ethereum version of Pdex over and make it native Pdex on your mainnet right now. That's correct, right?
Exactly. They can migrate over the ERC20 PDEX they have to native PDEX now that we have a mainnet.
Right. And the advantage there is now already, I believe they can start staking their Pdex on the mainnet and earning some yield for helping secure the blockchain through either being validated themselves or by nominating their Pdex to another validator to help secure the system. Do you know what kind of yield rewards people will get for staking on Pdex right now?
Yes, it's exactly like the yield curve is similar to what Polkadot has. So we are targeting a yield curve of 10% with an ideal stake of 50% of the token, 50% of the
Awesome.
circulating supply. Yep.
Awesome. So yeah, so just so that everyone understands, the mainnet is launched. If you have Pdex out there on Ethereum, you can bridge over and start staking that Pdex, which we would highly recommend doing because not only are you going to get some great rewards for that, but you're going to help build out Polkadex by helping secure the blockchain. So, Vivek, can you just explain to us a little bit? Because this is something that I don't know that I've fully wrapped my brain around. So, so eventually we know that Polkadex is going to be a parachain, or that's the goal. And I want to talk a lot about that because we had a lot of community questions about that. But can you explain to us why the Pdex blockchain needs to be secured on its own if it's a parachain? Wouldn't you get security from the relay chain?
Yes. So there's a lot of discussion before we decided to launch it as a solo chain, right? So we had two options. The option one was obviously to wait for the parachain slots to be available and be ready for the becoming a parachain directly, which is actually the ideal scenario. But for example, if you look at various projects that are actually waiting for the parachain slot, it's a work in progress, right? Polkadot is a very recently launched protocol, and there has been several iterations to the way the way things are moving, and there have been delays in for that matter. So for a project like ours or similar to us, it is essential to start focusing on the actual DApp that we are building and not just becoming a parachain, right? Essentially, we are a decentralized exchange and we set out to solve certain problems and create something useful, right? So, parachain is basically the final, what do you say, a bridge that allows us to express as an application. So there's a lot more work that needs to be done and tested, and and to make sure that these are actually working in the real decentralized scenario. So that is why we couldn't afford to wait till the parachain slot, because we had a lot more other works or other focus area to spend our time on. And on top of the fact that there have been projects waiting for close to 2 years for this parachain slots to work, like the leading projects which are working hand in hand with the Web3 ecosystem for the last 2 years. So naturally, they have a bigger ecosystem, and naturally, they have a bigger traction right now. And since we are a relatively new project, which was launched last year, we thought that we could buy this time to focus on the actual problem that we are solving, make sure that everything is working fine, make sure that the testnet is up and running, make sure that the code is audited properly, and all of the other nitty-gritties are sorted out before we actually go for the auctions. And on top of the fact that we have different set of products, and one of them is actually going to be a kind of a regulated decentralized exchange when it comes to the order book side of things, where you're trying to bridge institutional money. We would rather bridge it with something more audited and more secure, like Polkadot, rather than go for you know something on Kusama. So essentially, I think the reason why we launched it as solo chain is basically to start off with things and to get that learning over. And we're working very closely with the Parity team. And whenever that slot is ready for Parachain, and we have different strategies for that. Once we win that Parachain slot, we will be migrating from a solo chain to a Parachain. And the
Right.
Parity team is already working on it because there are so many projects waiting for this facility to be ready. They cannot
Yeah,
keep
that's
waiting
that's
indefinitely without launching the project.
that's amazing. Yeah, so that makes a lot of sense. I like that strategy a lot. The not waiting this way, Polkadex can be ready to go once
Right?
even before you get a parachain, you're basically ready to go. But then once you can get that parachain, you can get the added advantage of being the
Right.
parachain whenever that happens. So you did answer one of my questions already in there. So you're not going to be going for a Kusama parachain first. You're going directly to Polkadot whenever that time comes. Do you have in your mind maybe a timeline? Because obviously, yeah, the Polkadot parachains have not yet started. We think they're going to start soon, or they're going to be announced very soon. But as you say, there's going to be a ton of competition off the top for that. Do you have in your mind a timeline? Or do you think like maybe 6 months, a year? What are you thinking for when you might get that Parachain. And I just want to say to the community that just on what you said there, it doesn't really, that timeline doesn't really matter, in that you're creating Polkadex without the Parachain. You're going to be ready to go without the Parachain, your own solo chain. But when
Right.
do you imagine that Parachain coming?
Yes. I think the Polkadot auctions should be starting by the end of the year. That's what I understand, unless there's any other delay. So we are expecting that to be completed in the first quarter of 2020. And in case there's a delay, that's the plan B that we have. Since we already have a chain, we will be able to launch our product no matter what. So because we have some commitments as far as the turn, we cannot keep the team idle. We have to keep going. So, and we also have commitments to our, private investors. So we will be going and launching the product. And as soon as the Parachain slot is available, even on that, we may have to spend at least a few weeks for migrating this to the Parachain.
Great. But do you have a sense, are you going to try to be involved in the auctions right off the bat, or are you going to wait for, down the road? Like, I know, like, we've been watching the Kusama ones. Some projects went right away for the first auctions, and then other projects have waited, and now there's 10 parachains on the go, and now we see some new projects starting to come in. Do you have a sense of when you might join the
Yes.
auctions?
Yeah, we will wait for the first auctions to be announced. That's the first step, right? And then you look at who is actually bidding for those, who are the contenders, right? And we want to make sure that if we go for it, we have a fair chance of winning. So if we see that the first auctions are going to be dominated by the same set of teams that have been waiting, which is a larger ecosystem than ours, we may go for the second one. So
Right.
it's not a end game where you lose out on the first auctions, you don't have another option, right? So
Yeah.
we can always go for the second slot, which is far more easier for us because we consider ourselves to be probably in the first 10 projects in the ecosystem. So we have a better chance of
Right. And do you
getting there.
imagine, because I know in the tokenomics, I noticed that you have built into your tokenomics already some reserves for the parachain, but do you think you're going to be doing a crowd loan? Just, I know there are people out there who have some Polkadot and they're waiting to deploy it to crowd loans. Is Polkadex going to be doing a crowd loan for the parachain?
Of course, I think we will be doing it most likely, and the strategy for that should be decided at that, because there could be, it's an evolving space, right? So, and also the fact that we already have a chain and we already have a value creation happening on the network. um, it depends on what could be your leading strategy. So either it could be completely relying on crowd loan, or it could be a mix of both crowd loan and our assets sitting with us. So it just could be the strategy at that point. But I think crowd loan is a fair way to even distribute and get the community involved. So
Okay, great. Good to know.
yeah,
So
get that.
you crypto wisers out there who've got some Polkadot, just know that at some point you're going to have a chance to lend that Polkadot to Polkadex and help them out get a parachain. And if you don't have Polkadot yet, I don't know what you're waiting for. Grab yourself some Polkadot already. Geez. All right, Vivek, let's talk about transaction speed. This is a big conversation in crypto, obviously, especially with Dexs. We've been hearing a lot of hype recently. We're seeing huge success with Solana, with Avalanche, with some of these other layer ones. And it seems to be the competition is about speed, transaction speed. Solana has seemed to really create a narrative that they're going to be the fastest blockchain out there. Can you talk to us about how Polkadex, what the transaction speed's going to look like, and how you will compare to some of these other L1s out there right now?
Right. So I think your question is actually very relevant at this time, because there was a tweet from uh, Gavin I think last week, when Solana was actually, it was facing some issues and the chain got stuck and had to be restarted. So it's happening quite a lot now. So I think this mad race for the TPS, or the transactions per second, is actually unfounded, right? Because I think there is a wrong narrative out there that Polkadex is actually behind the TPS. Well, achieving TPS is fine, but we are more focused on trades per second, right? Because that's what's
Right.
important for an application like ours. So in the exchange, when somebody tries to trade, we should be able to accommodate those trades. So by trades, you mean incomplete trades as well, because you might place an open order and then you might cancel it. And then you might place a limit order and you might cancel it. So there could be a lot of back and forth orders that is coming onto the system. So if you look at just the trade settlements, it is a different number than the actual trades that are, or the initiation of trades that are happening. So we were trying to focus on how to accommodate these. So in the initial testnet, we basically demonstrated how an on-chain trade settlement or on-chain trade initiation would look like with a 3 second block time. So because we tweaked the 6 second of Polkadot default to 3 seconds, and even then, it didn't look really good. I mean, it was kind of clumsy when it comes to allowing the bots to operate. So we had to go for a re-architecture. We had to redo the whole thing, and we came up with a new technology bridge. We identified that basically the kind of experience that we have set out to do for the users, it's not essentially about being you know solved in with software protocols. So you basically cannot eliminate the fact that internet has a basic latency for transaction, right? Even if it's really fast, even if in the same data center, there's a basic latency to data when you interact with the. It is not like, or it's unlike interacting with the hardware. Why do you have this response coming from the servers when you interact with Binance or any other centralized exchange? Because you're actually interacting with the native hardware or some form of first line of entry. So this is impossible to solve with a network protocol. So it's like trying to use, it's like trying to compare software RAID with a hardware RAID, right? So we thought, why not we actually try and focus on the fundamentals of what we're trying to solve and arrive at a middle point where you're basically allowing the transaction to come through to a hardware. At the same time, that hardware or the people who are running that hardware should not have access to these funds, right? And allow them to have as many transactions as possible in a near native speed with the hardware. At the same time, secure it in such a way that nobody has external access to it, and only those trades that gets completed are settled on chain,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So that's why we remodeled the whole thing, and we brought the at that time I think Fala Network was already working on, it was a Web3 funded project. So we also found another project which was basically building a abstraction layer for substrate for the Intel XGX processors. And we also found that the trusted execution enclave technology is something not really restricted to Intel. There are so many open projects out there for building open architecture based hardware processors for this. So we saw a long-term future, like in 5-10 years, this could probably be one of the ways that we can actually solve the problem of having a layer of hardware which can be secure enough so that blockchains are used inherently for verifiability, not for execution. Because blockchains are crap when it comes to execution, right? It doesn't have a lot of time, it doesn't have a lot of meat for for executing those transactions. You have a decentralized structure to it. So using it for verifiability was the best way that uh, we could arrive at a trade-off between creating a product that is usable, user-friendly, and at the same time achieve the goals that we actually wanted or we set out to solve.
Yeah.
Right?
That
So
makes
that's how
sense.
we came up with this architecture.
That's great. And I think that might lead us to
So with
some of the work.
TEE, you're able to achieve, yeah, the question of TPS, right? It was
Yeah.
because I didn't complete that. So with TEE, you're basically, you can actually consume as much transactions as a native hardware, like a computer. So you take it up any level, you can scale it to any level. It scales horizontally and vertically, right? So that's why 500,000 transactions, the trades per second is possible.
Right. That's amazing.
It has nothing to do
Um,
with the TPS and the blockchain.
right. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, I think this is going to lead me to something else I wanted to talk to you about, which is some of the partnerships that you already have in place with other Polkadot projects. But just first, I just wanted to ask in general, as you have already mentioned, you're a little bit of a new kid on the block when it comes to Polkadot and Substrate compared to some of the other projects. But what has your
Mhm.
experience been so far with the rest of the Polkadot community? And we know that you're partnered with a lot of them already. So what has that experience been in general?
Well, I think it's a mixed experience, I would say, because people are obviously skeptical. We cannot blame them because all of the co-founders are relatively not known in the crypto space. Even though I've been in this space for a long time, I've never got any kind of, I've never came out in the open to actually contribute in the space yet. This is my first, project where I actually involved so much. So there was a lot of skepticism in the beginning, but all of these skepticism were overcome by the work that we contributed. Especially if you look at the GitHub page that we have right from the beginning, we had one of the most active and the most contributed projects out there, right? So you could literally see everything that we are working on. Even at some point, the interactions were also open among the developers, right? Only now that since we have different other sections that we are working on as an R&D, those sections are closed, but all of the other contributions are open. So it took us a while to convince the community on what we are capable of. And I think it started to shift from last December when we first showcased the on-chain order book on the testnet, first version of testnet, for which we got the open grants. So
Mm-hmm.
uh, that's when that changed things, and suddenly there was a big big change in the way people or investors are coming to us and talking to us and what we're trying to do. So we just told them, see, this is what we want to achieve. This is where we are heading to, and ultimately, this is a and people. There have been investors who asked, "Isn't it too complex to build?" Right? And if you look at that, even the messages that we keep getting, if you're able to pull this off, this is amazing. Everybody says that. But why are you doing it? Because it's too tough. I mean, they're trying to correct us, right? Why do you have to do all this actually, right? It's too complex. But they also admit the fact that if you're able to pull it off, this is going to be really groundbreaking. So that is the confidence, or that is the conviction that we had that okay, at least our path is right. It's only a matter
Right.
of whether we are able to do it, right? So that is our
Yeah, yeah.
belief that we are able to pull it off, which
I have
we
to
only
say,
we
I
know.
mean, from a personal standpoint, in terms of when I look to invest in crypto projects, I'm looking for the projects that are the most ambitious, those exact projects that are where I say, well, if they can pull this off, this is going to be amazing. Because what's the point of being in crypto if you're only aiming small, if you're only trying to create something that is already exists or isn't really moving us forward in this new kind of Web3 world. So that's
Exactly
that. Yeah, I want to talk about
the
a
reason,
specific part.
right? Because when we launched the order book, it was good enough actually. It would have worked.
Right,
It would have been another either delta on Polkadot, and there's no other either delta on Polkadot right now
right.
with order book, right? So it was perfectly fine for us to launch it, and it could have been very unique. But that's not what we started with. We wanted a different set of problems to solve, and it wouldn't have been possible with that.
Yeah, no, I like that. So what I want to talk about a couple of specific partnerships because they're obviously we follow a lot of the projects in the Polkadot space. We're excited about a lot of them. One of the ones that we're super excited about is Kilt, and we know that you partnered with Kilt and Fractal, and you're going to be doing KYC, social KYC, as part of Polkadex. Can you tell us a little bit about this?
Yeah, that's Kilt came as a last piece of the puzzle we had because we were facing a lot of you know, I wouldn't say backlash, a concern from the purists, right? Which all of us began as purists, right? When you follow Bitcoin and the philosophy behind it, and you are not ready to compromise with your customer data, right? You do not want to give your customer data to a central party because that kills the whole philosophy behind Bitcoin. So we had to actually strike a trade-off where when we are doing something, uh, it should be useful for both the the purists and people who are actually ready for a bit of a trade-off to actually get this customer experience. So to achieve that trade-off, we weren't ready to compromise the fact that okay, we do KYC ourselves, right? So that's exactly why we created two products, where one of them caters purely to the philosophy of Bitcoin of being completely and fully decentralized, which is out in the open, like it cannot be controlled. And the other one, which is basically the Polkadex order book or the flagship product that we have, you cannot achieve its full potential if you don't make this trade-off of allowing this to function in a regulated society that we have today, especially with the kind of actions that we are seeing around the world. There have been cases, especially in the previous projects that I have closely followed, where once these dexes achieve a certain threshold of volume, they get shut down, or basically the regulators go after the founders, and at some point it's difficult to run. Right now there's a lot of technology available to circumvent that, but if you want to achieve full potential of bridging the traditional equity to crypto, you need to have a trade-off. That's where decentralized KYC fitted perfectly with the kind of vision that we had, where you're basically not, taking control of customer data. You're basically allowing somebody else or some other trusted or regulated entities to store it. It could be Fractal, it could be another, additional people in the future. So they can verify it themselves because they're all regulated and they have the, infrastructure in place, which is probably well managed to hold your data. And as a company, what is happening? Generally, when you submit your KYC to an exchange or any other service provider, they basically have access to your data, and they can actually, read that data to profile you as a customer, and sell products, and you essentially become the victim of another, Facebook or whatever the privacy issues are facing in the world right now. So that's something that we can avoid with decentralized KYC, where you are basically not doing KYC, you're basically asking for a proof of KYC, right?
Right.
So, and that too, we're not actually taking it as a company. Basically, the blockchain is actually reading that proof of identity and making sure that this is a legitimate person, that this person is a person, okay, not a bot or something.
All right. Yeah.
So that gives us more control to even dictate how it would function eventually, how even regulations will change to accommodate these kind of change. That's what Web3 is working with, right? So projects like Kilt and Fractal, and they are working with they're trying to create protocols that would push this regulatory regime to be more accommodative when it comes to decentralized applications. Because
Yeah.
ultimately, what
No.
do you want to see? What are you trying to achieve? You're saying that either everybody's bad, you assume everybody's bad, and you actually pick out the good guys from there, right? So we are taking the reverse direction. We're assuming that everybody's good. Now you get a chance to go after somebody's bad.
Yeah. 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 No, I
So
love it. I love
that's
it.
the
I
kind
think
of, yeah.
it's such a great use case for what Kilt is building, and I'm excited to see that you're going to be implementing that, because it's a much better solution. Yeah, you can appease the regulators, but without collecting, people's personal data yourself. And another partnership that's along those lines, different, but along those lines, is I hear that you're also working with Integritee, which is another project that we really like, and that's about securing or being able to process sensitive data in a secure way. Can you talk about how maybe you're going to be utilizing what Integritee is doing and how that's going to also help Polkadex?
Yes. I think I mentioned about how we shifted from an on-chain order book to TEs, right? It
Yeah.
happened back in February. So the idea behind that was actually to achieve the trades per second that we wanted for a trading bot operator to come and make a profit in a decentralized exchange. Right now, it's very difficult with the kind of, because bots move in sub-second speed. it needs to be really fast, even faster than Solana, I would say, because Solana is like 500 millisecond, but you're expecting, we spoke to a few trading bot companies and how they operate and the programmers that, handle the APIs. They are looking at 20 millisecond latency or 50 millisecond latency, which is impossible to achieve with a distributed network. So that's when we looked at TE, because Fala was building a trusted execution based project there. So when we looked at it, we saw that it is the perfect trade-off to actually store and execute this data in a secure manner. At the same time, you are not giving control to the person who is executing it. So the person can just execute it, but they have absolutely no way to gain access to it, which means that we are serving the purpose of the trading bots or APIs that need this latency because it's directly interacting with the hardware, and the completed trades are finally settled on the blockchain. So you're getting best of both worlds here, right? So Integritee was one of the projects that initially secured a open grant, Web3 open grant, for building an abstraction layer for Intel XTX. So to start off with things, we were also trying to look at the SGX, and that's when we started partnering with Integritee team, because their engineers had an idea of how it's done in Substrate. So we thought of engaging a couple of engineers from there so that our engineers can learn from them and understand. But it's good to know that at this point our engineers are up to speed with what is actually built with Integritee, and we are kind of slowly becoming self-sufficient ourselves.
Oh, cool. Very cool. Yeah, that's awesome. Um, I I guess I want to just get your sense of where, say, 5 years, 10 years from now, where do you think the Polkadot ecosystem? Because obviously you're not the only Dex that is being built on Polkadot. A lot of people within our community ask about the difference between you and PolkaSwap. Which is better? I always say both. I love both your projects, and I think there's room for many. We also know that Akala is going to be building a DeFi hub, but as someone who's building the project, how do you see that? Like, how do you balance the competition with these other projects with also knowing that you're building an ecosystem together, that the success of everyone is going to help everyone else? How do you balance that?
Well, I think each of them have different use cases, in my opinion. We will be more focused on the retail traders in a big way, especially when it comes to the the average trader, like who would like to trade in in a centralized exchange at the same time, who have concerns about locking his assets up there, right? So that's why I told you it just opens up a new market actually. Plus the fact that we are very focused on order book, and the way its functions is very different from how the other dexes operate in the same ecosystem. Akala is, I think, is more focused on DeFi exposure, or the yields that people can actually lock their assets and get yields from it, and so it becomes it's a completely different use case, right? Because we are focused on building an application which allows people to trade in a very similar manner as he would experience in a traditional, exchange like Coinbase, or even
Right.
somebody's coming
Yeah, yeah.
from Nasdaq, or somebody who's at New York Sticks from somewhere.
So in some
Because
ways,
order changes are the way.
in some ways, I guess you're really more making a better version, or trying to innovate on what Coinbase, Binance, FTX are doing. Those are really the ones that
Exactly.
you're competing with on some level, versus, and not the Polka swaps or the Uniswaps or even Akalas. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, long term, yes. We want to build a better way of trading these assets, especially the crypto assets, because inherently we feel that the custody solutions we have right now, the technology itself is allowing that custody to be, a little bit decentralized with the kind of philosophy that Bitcoin was built upon, right? So when you compare come to the question of being your own bank sort of thing, you ultimately need to have custody of your assets, even though you're outsourcing it to somebody else, right? But the first right is to have custody by yourself. Your
Right.
first choice shouldn't be that your custody is somebody else, with somebody else.
Yeah.
Okay, like withdrawing cash, you can withdraw cash and keep it at your home. At least you have, you're holding on to that, right? So that sort of freedom is not available right now for the kind of experience that we are having as a trade-off. So the moment you need more experience, you have to have these trade-offs where you sacrifice your assets and you go to these centralized institutions. So I think in 5 to 10 years from now, um, I think there would be more decentralized ways of holding and storing data.
Right.
So decentralized exchanges are just one part of the applications that is part of this solution.
And do you see, like, could you see a time where, because we know on some of the other parachain projects, like say Shidin or even Akala or something, where even Sora, where we see other dApps being built on those parachains. Can you see a time where maybe there would be a project that would build on Polkadex, where they might do the customer interaction, but on the back end they're using Polkadex, but they're helping the customer. Maybe they're helping out people that aren't comfortable doing it themselves or whatnot, but really what they're using is Polkadex. Could you see a time, or do you see that maybe in the future?
Absolutely, that was the philosophy behind rolling out Polka Pool and Polka IDO, right? So we are more focused on what we originally wanted to do, right? It's more product specific. It's like building an iPhone, right? There are mobiles out there. It does the same functions. It just does the same thing. You can send emails. But when you are building an iPhone or something really in your imagination, it may not be catering to a lot of people at the beginning. So we envision that this is the way it should be, right? So we are building that. But
Yeah.
there could be people who are out there who would like to utilize the problems that we have already solved on the basic layer one of the Polkadex chain.
Yeah.
They can spin off another exchange or they can spin off another application, make use of its properties that we have built into it, and run their own applications. Yes, and that's exactly the reason why we have a treasury that is like almost 40% of the Polkadot tokens are in the treasury. So there's a large chunk of, if you compare that to many projects out there, it's a large chunk waiting to be dispersed to the public for contributing the ecosystem. So which can
Right.
be unlocked in the next years coming by, and we could have projects which have synergy with what we are building right now.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, that's kind of one of the main reasons I love Polkadot and the projects like Polkadex that are building on Polkadot is there's such a big vision to them, and you can see that it's just the beginning of where we are, and then years down, there's so many possibilities with what you guys are building and the tools that you're building, which is amazing. Well, you've been amazing with your time. I want to get to our community questions. We have a few really good questions that we got from Twitter from our community, and I just want to hit those up first before I let you go. One I thought was a good question. What is the effect, if any, on Pokedex and Polkadot of China declaring all crypto transactions illegal? How does that affect what you're doing at all, if it does? And is there any way that you can combat that or address it at all?
Of course, that's why we have the blockchain, right? Blockchain is essentially decentralized, and the only product that is affected by the China ban is already affected by other bans or other restrictions across the world, is Polkadex order book, which is going to be functioning under the European Union exchange license. But the blockchain itself and the products on it, like Polka Pool and the Polka IDO, both of them is completely open to all for participation, and the Polkadex blockchain is open to all. So it is not restricted region wise, or it's an open protocol and it's blockchain. Anybody can participate. Blockchain doesn't discriminate anyone from participating in any of these
Right.
projects.
But there's nothing, obviously, there's nothing you guys can do. I mean, if there's a law in China that people can't trade crypto, then they just can't trade crypto. I guess it's just even in the
Well, I think
decentralized.
once you have a decentralized protocol, even we cannot do anything to it, right? It's like a protocol, and it's blockchain, so anyone can access with the kind of access he has, and it's basically like you can't hold Vitalik responsible if somebody breaks law by building a D app on top of Ethereum, can you?
Right. Yeah. I guess the only way it
So
might
that's the approach that
adjust
we are
is,
taking. We are just,
I guess maybe where it might affect you is marketing, like if you're what regions you're marketing to, or where you're really trying to like grow Pokedex first or anything. Has that shifted at all based on, China is such a huge market. Has that shifted in terms of where your focus is?
of course, I think we can take steps at that time when the order book is released, or at least a month before that. We'll have a strategy discussion. We have a framework in mind, but we would rather disclose it at the time of the launch. Um, I mean, it's definitely, I think, not the US, because US has very strict regulations on their interpretation of tokens, right? So it's kind of risky to offer it to the US market. But even in Asia, I think there are so many jurisdictions which are open to crypto, and especially if you look at regions like even India, which is like recently, uh, you know, making a lot of traction, especially with the DeFi users there. So there are various regions in the world where we can actually experiment with it. End of the day, I think we solve a problem, we position it in markets which are okay with it, and be ready for any changes that are necessary and be agile about it. I think that's the way, you know businesses should function. It has nothing to do with the protocols that we are releasing. It will be released in any way. It'll be out there. Nobody can stop that. The
Yeah.
only thing that can be stopped is running it as a business. So
Yeah.
that's a different
Yeah.
philosophy, right? That's a different philosophy of building protocols and building businesses. So that
Yeah.
has a
No, that
different way of
makes,
approaching it. Yeah, it'll just happen. There
yeah,
are
that
smarter
makes
people
sense.
out there who can build a company.
Okay, a couple other quick questions. When is the mobile app going to be? Where's that in the roadmap? When do you imagine the mobile app being ready?
Oh, the mobile app is actually ready. It's a matter of integrating with the blockchain.
Okay, awesome. And then
Yeah.
one last question: is the order book that we see in the marketing materials, that it's very sexy, looks really good in the marketing materials, is that what it's going to look like when it launches?
Yep. That's how it's going to look like.
Beautiful. We love it. All right, Vivek. It's been a real pleasure getting to talk to you. We really love Pokedex here at the channel at CryptoWise. We love the ambition of it. We think that it really could be a very bold, innovative uh, Dex, more than a Dex, as you said, as you've explained. There's lots of elements to it, but we think it really is kind of looking forward and seeing where we can go with decentralized exchanges. So thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. Really excited to follow the project. Again, I just want to tell the community the mainnet has launched this week. So if you have Pdex on Ethereum, or if after watching this interview you're interested, you're going to go out there, get yourself some Pdex, which, why wouldn't you want to do that? It's available on a bunch of different exchanges. You can now bridge that Pdex over to the mainnet, get it in native Pdex, and start staking it, start securing the blockchain. And because that is the first step for us to get Polkadex here into the real world. So thank you so much for your time. Look forward to chatting with you down the road sometime, Vivek. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Marvin and Milton. Thank you.
All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. And if you're someone who really likes to go in depth on these projects, make sure to check out our other CryptoWise chats. I think watching interviews with the actual leaders of these projects is an essential part of doing your own research. So if that sounds like you, if you're someone who doesn't just throw your money anywhere without knowing exactly what you're getting into, make sure that you're checking out our CryptoWise chats. All right, guys, thanks so much for watching. Until next time, I'm Milton, saying over and out.